Hey guys, it's your girl Sabrina Stowe Geraldino from HonesTea On Demand. Thank you for coming and watching and tuning in. Of course, this is a show about legendary people in the music industry during the height of hip hop. And today I have a wonderful guest. But before I let you know exactly who she is, I want you guys to please subscribe. I have a woman of power in the house. I have been introduced to this woman by way of a friend, Andrina Hale. My new guest of the day, her name is Michelle S. She's also known as Professor S. But today we'll talk about Michelle S's past in the music industry. She's a powerhouse, as I said. And I want you guys to get on and to give her a round of applause. Hey, Michelle, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I am so excited to have you. As I said, we have this mutual friend, Andrina, and she's amazing, funny, crazy. And I spoke with you briefly, and I feel the vibe. I love your hair, girl. I'm dangerous when I'm a redhead. So, so today, Michelle, I will be interviewing you about all of the wonderful things you've been doing in the industry, behind the scenes, in radio and music, at record labels, Napster, beyond, and now a professor. But I also would like for you to share something that no one knows about, that's never before told by you, specifically about some artists that you filled out in the questionnaire. But we'll get to that, Michelle. Are you nervous?
That's the tea.
Exactly. Are you sipping on something, girl?
I'm not, but I do have a coffee right here. So,
oh yes, we're sipping on something. I've got rum shata.
Ah, awesome. Let me do some.
With a dash of coffee. Now, where are you at, Michelle?
Syracuse, New York.
Ooh, is it warm? Because it's summertime somewhere. I'm in sunny Florida.
Yeah, it's actually beautiful. Summertime is the beautiful season here because, we get snow, and I'm from the West Coast. So the snow is always yikes, but it's beautiful now.
Okay, good. We want to talk about that. How the hell you ended up in Syracuse. I hope there's some hot guy or girl that you at least got out there besides work.
Man, no, it's literally, I moved out here to teach Gen Z.
Oh,
that is why I am here. Yeah.
Ooh, that's interesting. Well, that is we're going to get to that, but tell me a little bit about yourself. Where do you come from? You said you're from the West Coast.
I was born in Providence, Rhode Island. My family, my mom and dad moved to the West Coast, Simi Valley, which is kind of enclave on the other side of the San Fernando Valley in Southern California. So I grew up there until I was about 11 or 12. And then our family moved to Phoenix, Arizona.
Oh, so wait a minute. You went from Providence, New England. Are you like a New Englander from
Well, I was a baby. That's what, I was like maybe newborn when they left to start their life in Southern California. So my childhood was in Cali.
And then you ended up in Arizona did you finish school out there?
I did. Yep. And it was Arizona actually where I started my career because I started as a club DJ. I was still in high school. I was DJing at the local all ages nightclub, which our neighbors owned.
Wait a minute. You were an actual Zigga Zigga DJ.
Yes.
Were you actually mixing and scratching?
Yes. That's how I started in the game. Yeah.
Well, where did you learn how to DJ?
It was Cheryl and Glenn Cipriano owned this club called Sgt. Pepper's Video Dance Club. And it was right on the outskirts of the campus of Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona. And so I started actually at the club because it was a small business. And I worked behind the bar, but I was always interested in music. So I was obsessed with the music business from the time I was a child. And my North Star was Michael Jackson and Prince and the Revolution. Those are the people who were inspiring me. And one night, the DJs, I guess this was a problematic issue at the time, they just didn't show up for work. And Glenn, the owner, was so frustrated that these guys were like flaking. He's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And Cheryl, his wife, goes, well, Michelle's into music, you know, let her DJ, you know, like the Italian family, the Ciprianos, right? So
right.
I'm like, I'll do it. And so Glenn taught me the basics of how to, you know, work the turntables. And I had one afternoon to practice, and then they launched me, and I just figured it out as I went. And the club was popular.
Oh my God. So that is like lesson number one, opportunity. I always tell people, like, you get these weird opportunities, you don't know how to do something, but you're definitely like, oh, maybe I'm onto that. Like, I can do that. Go for it. Because look, okay, that is just the beginning. That is phenomenal. Like, someone said, hey, Michelle can do it. And Michelle did it. So how many years were you a DJ there?
Probably 3 or 4 years, all through high school. So I started when I was, I think, 15, and I stopped when I was 18, because what happened is the club blew up and there were lines out the door. So the local radio station, which was a station called KZZP, came into the nightclub, the music director, and was like, who is doing the music for this club? And the security points to me, and I'm in the DJ booth, and he offered me a job. He goes, do you want to come down the station, maybe work for us? And I was like, sure. And that's how that started. So then I worked my way up at the station while DJing at the nightclub. And it became really useful because I was able to, well, music was at a crossroads at this time, because this is when pop radio, which had traditionally always just been playing like rock and Euro dance and pop, was starting to play music from the street, Black artists, Latino artists that were bubbling up. It was the whole 1980s beat street, wild style revolution. Hip hop culture was starting to bubble up. And that's what I was doing in that club. And so they couldn't figure it out. So I was able to watch the reaction of the audience in the nightclub, and then basically took a risk one day to go around everybody to tell the program director about a song that was absolutely blowing up. That's how I got a role in the music department. So again, to your point about taking a risk, like that's what I did by approaching the PD on my own and not going around, because I kept telling the music director, this record is, I'll tell him. And I thought, I'm not waiting around forever for you to tell this man. So I went to his office and told him myself, hey, this record's blowing up. I DJ. I'm Michelle. I'm just an intern, but I DJ in the club, and you should know about this song.
So you went from whoa, here she comes. Watch out, boy.
Yes.
Chew you up. And then street beat breakdown, right? Literally. So that was the beginning of like you said, the street music bubbling into, it was rap back then, right?
Yeah, it was hip hop, but it was also like street club music. If you remember, it was like it was break dancing. This is late 80s, right?
That's why it's not hip hop yet, right?
Yeah.
Because we were rap music. We were rapping with Curtis Blow and Jam Master
Run DMC and LL Cool J, and it was rhythmic for sure, but it was the first wave.
So when he accepted the job at the radio station, a program director, which is the man in the most powerful seat next to the GM, in my opinion.
Yes.
They have all the power. He offered you a position. Was it a paid position? Was it an intern that was just paying your dues? Or did you had a paid internship? And what role was that? Was it the promotions department? Was it the music music department where you went out in the vans with the DJs? Or did you DJ in the evening? Or did you have AM drive, PM drive? Like, I'm a media buyer, by the way. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So you understand. Yeah. No. So it was, radio, they have no money ever, even then. So no, it was like, I was in the research department. So I was hired by the music director, but the PD, Guy Zapolian, had a proprietary system where instead of he would call the listeners of the area to find out what they wanted to hear. And we would do our own research on records. So not only calling retail to find out what was selling, but literally playing clips of songs over the phone to people. And this is when everyone had telephones, right? It was before internet, before cell phones. So we would spend, a half an hour playing songs. And so I started doing that. And then they would use that to program the station, to organize the rotation categories, which I know you know about. right?
Yes.
Being a media buyer. So yeah, so that's how I began, was in that research department, which was an extension of music, but I was desperate to get into the music department. So
I worked at Power 99, interned in the newsroom, but my friends that were in the music, I don't know if they ever did that. To me, that's like grassroots radio, like calling the listener. I don't even understand that, but that is exceptional. That's something that I've never heard of. Was it something that you guys did, or was that standard in radio during that time after you got into radio more professionally, more years? Is that something that's the norm?
It's certainly the norm for a top 40 or any active format radio station to do research, but what Guy Zapolian was doing was way ahead of his time. So, and actually he went on in the industry to like do this as a consultant at a high level, but this was the very beginnings of him formulating this. And truth be told, that radio station ended up with double-digit ratings in Phoenix. It's a legendary station, and there's a lot of really well-known people who came out of this original team, Kevin and Bean, who are Hall of Fame radio people. Jimmy Kimmel started at this radio station.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a lot of people. Myself, a man named Todd Fisher, who went on to be a big programmer. Kevin Weatherly, who went on to be a big. So the station in the business is known for having like this home team that really did well, but it all stemmed from this one programmer, and kind of his future cast way of like looking at how to program. And it really, and it circles back to what's happening today, because the philosophy was always the audience is in charge. It's not about us telling you what's popular. It's you tell us what you love, and then we'll play what you love. And it's weird how with the deregulation, how radio has completely forgotten that, and B, insists on saying, this is what we're going to play. We're going to tell you. And that's not the way it should work.
So you said deregulation. What deregulation? You may want to break that down to some of us who are ignorant and don't know what's regulated and what's not.
So a transformative piece of legislation was passed in 1996, and it was called the Telecommunications Act of 1996. And basically what it did was deregulated all media. Radio, television, satellite, and it was a framework to kind of loosen regulations around the advent of the internet, which they knew at the time was coming by mid-90s, right? Because we had in early 90s AOL and all that. It was already here. But what it did was basically facilitated the corporate takeover of public airwaves. And this is why we don't have access to information that is not through the lens of a corporate view, because basically all these companies did was, it used to be you could only own a max of 2 stations in a marketplace, and it was expanded to 8. So all the rich corporations went around, they bought everything up. And before you know it, it squeezed out everyone, particularly independent owners.
Right.
And it created this catalyst of not just top-down programming, but sort of the way I describe it in the book that I wrote is the franchisation of radio, where they turned all of these very unique, very local and stations into basically McDonald's franchises that all serve the same boring hamburger.
Yes. And that's what makes the stations now seem very political, in my view, because everybody has the same top 20 hits or the same rotation, the same ads, the same regulations from the general manager, because it's top down. Everyone has.
There's not even staffs anymore. They cut all the staffs.
Yep. And it's definitely different. And I don't know how easy or hard it is to get your music played, but tell me, so you went from that Tempe, Arizona market and into where? Because that is phenomenal, that you were able to do something that's grassroots that actually, to me, it's like you had a think tank research going on. Like, what do they do now? They do these where you get
marketing
together
studies.
Yes. marketing studies in person. People get paid to do that now, right?
Yes.
So after that station, where did you go and how did you pivot to another station? Like, and what role were you at?
So I eventually rose to music director position at that radio station, which was KCCP. And then the music director that came and found me that night in the club, he was a guy named Kevin Weatherly. And he had moved up through the ranks and finally got a job where he was a program director and running a station. And it was in San Diego. It was called Q106. So he called me and was like, come work with me. So I went to San Diego from Phoenix and worked with Kevin in San Diego.
Now that's a bigger market, no?
Way bigger and very different from Phoenix. Yeah.
Okay. So
the ethnic makeup of the market is different. California, although, Phoenix, the whole Southwest, right? Like first of all, that used to be Mexico, in our history.
Yes.
So there is a gigantic Latino population, but the music is just more rhythmic. It's less, Arizona has a country element, a rock element, in terms of like what the audience likes.
Yes.
That ain't the case in San Diego. It's rhythmic.
Oh, okay.
So
Because
I was learning
those Latin rhythmics, doom, ticka, ticka, tick. Yes, I love it. I don't know. I see these like Instagram posts of my Chicano girls dancing to a lot of rhythmic beats and how their footwork. I think it's all fascinating. So you went there, a bigger market. You finally got a paycheck?
I did. Yes. I got a paycheck when I became music director of KCCP, but I wasn't there long. It was by the time I actually became music director, I was there maybe 7-8 months before Kevin hired me away.
Hired you away to another location?
To go to the San Diego station. So I went from Phoenix to San Diego.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and then you were music director in San Diego as well, right?
Yeah. For 3 years.
I'm sorry.
For 3 years.
That's a powerful position. Usually people that have that role have been in radio for quite some time or went to college for broadcasting. That wasn't you didn't know school in broadcasting. You see, guys, you see when I tell people, you don't have to go to school to like live your dream, to do the things that you love. This woman, Michelle, did not, and you're a professor.
Yes, that's the great irony.
Are you an adjunct or are you just a professor?
I am a full-time professor, and I was, I think, just the second person in the history of this university to be hired without a college degree, because the way the provost made sense was they looked at my whole resume and they said, well, if these were college classes, this woman would have a doctorate. And so they hired me.
You clap. You could have clap if you want to pay for it, right? You know what those claps are, where you pay for your lifelong skills, your skills.
Yes.
And you could turn it into a degree, but it costs so much money. But yes, that is so inspiring. Tell their provost, like, call me. I got some media buy stuff I could talk about. But
okay.
I'm an AI writer now, AI editor, I'm sorry. So I'm like all over the place. That's another subject. I'm going to have Andrina interview me because
that's a whole wormhole that would be another 2-hour conversation, AI and how that's impacting media. Oh my God.
Yes. But oh my God. So tell the people what the pay was like as a music director, because I think today that would definitely be, hundreds of thousands of dollars annually salary. But I don't know about back then.
Not even today. Here's the thing about radio. It's, I don't know. I mean, now it's so corporate and there are no jobs, right? Because it's like one person who's like running 3 stations. But in this day and age, stations had full staff from marketing, programming, everything. But it's never been, I never made a ton of money. It was, I think $20,000 was my starting salary in Phoenix. And then I think that went to 50 or 60 in San Diego. Now I was a little different because what I did after San Diego was I left radio for a bit and I went to work for the record business.
J Records.
Actually RCA first. And part of the reason why I did that was there was more upward momentum for female executives on the record side, and on the radio side, it was still old school, and no one would promote me into the position of program director. And I was like, I am trying to run it and not be your subordinate. So I'm going to go over to this side of the industry who wants me, because they are promoting women into positions of power. So I left and went to RCA Records in New York, and then worked there. I was their first director of a newly created department called Crossover Music Department. And this also was formed to address this rhythmic tilt that was going on in pop music. Right. And RCA knew it was coming. And then the records that I worked there were SWV, the breakout R&B supergroup. And then as I was leaving the label 3 years later, Wu-Tang Clan, who had just come into the building when I was getting ready to leave and go to LA, because I got pulled back to radio by someone I really admired to go work in Los Angeles. And it was an opportunity I just could not turn down. Even though I loved working on the record business side, I was like, oh my God, I can't.
You can't say no.
I can't say no.
I cannot. So you worked with Wu-Tang Clan. I managed You God.
Oh, wow. I mean, that whole crew is, they are unique unto themselves to this day. There's never been another, and I don't think there ever will be, in terms of like the entire Wu.
Yes.
You know?
Enter the Wu.
Mm-hmm. You're entering into the Wu.
So the San Diego situation at 55K or something back in the 90s, that was good.
Yeah.
You were still doing very good. Now, what records did you break in terms of, because I want to get into crossover, because what we used to call crossover would be my rap client, my hip hop artist client would want to cross over into the pop market.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal. But what were some of the records as music director from artists during the 90s, hip hop artists in particular, did you break?
So there is in the early 90s, like when it was San Diego, San Diego was a little more pop. So it were records like You Can't Touch This by MC Hammer. It was all the LL Cool J, Hey Lover, all those hits.
Okay.
The early Third Base stuff, Brooklyn Queens, the horrible Vanilla Ice record, which, by the way, interesting fun fact, and it's a horrible fact, but I teach it as a point. The very first technically rap record to go #1 was by Vanilla Ice, Ice Ice Baby. So even though this is very clearly a Black art form, it wasn't critical mass recognized until some dorky white guy did it and then made this record that went #1 on the pop charts.
Yeah, and I happen to like.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and then, Beastie Boys too, being the #1, the first group that had a #1 record, even though Run DMC had all these classic records. Right. So it was kind of the first era of trying to cross some of these artists. This is a rabbit hole that is also another conversation. But part of the reason my students ask me a lot, why do we even have formats? Which is a great question. And it's sort of interesting from the perspective of the first generation in history to have access of the world's largest music library because of the way digital music is arranged. And I have to talk to them about the history of the Billboard charts. And how the reason why we're in formats is because of these charts. And the charts were extremely segregated. There was a chart that Billboard used to publish called the race chart, that if you were Black, you were on this chart just because. And it went on all those years. And so what we were doing in radio was like, we're not doing that. Right. These are mass appeal records. It doesn't matter. So we were putting these songs on. It didn't matter about the artist, who they looked like, what culture they were from. MC Hammer or Kid Frost with La Raza, or Lighter Shade of Brown, Cypress Hill. There was that movement too, in terms of, what was going on. But it was no more of this. And by the way, it's been going on since doo-wop and country, right? Where, the Black artist would it would come from that, and then it would get adopted and then appropriated and then streamed, right? So it was sort of like the buck stops right here at hip hop. We're not doing this.
Right.
And so that was the Q106. Then when I went back to, went to the label side, then went back to radio in Los Angeles, it was to create a radio station that would later become known as 92.3 The Beat. It was called KBT.
That legendary was a hot station still, right? It's still popping, right?
It is. It's called The Real now, and it's a different station that's not connected, except for it's on the same frequency.
Right. Yeah.
But, you know, and corporate ownership. But yes, and it was, and that station, that was the beginning of G-Funk hip hop. That was Dre. That was the first Snoop album. That was Corruptin' Dog Pound. That was that Tupac, the entire movement. Not to mention all the R&B that was going on, because we love talking about 90s hip hop, but we also had, you know, Tony and TLC and En Vogue. And I mean, think about like the level of R&B mastery, Tony Braxton, you know, that was Whitney Houston, that was going on during that same era.
Yeah, the reason why we kind of keep it separate, or I think we don't make it a big deal in hip hop, is because we had to fight to just have hip hop. R&B has been around for so long right? So this has been our thing and our shape, and we actually shaped R&B in many ways with the remixes, bringing back the old tracks. So it is a marriage, but with certain artists like Mary J. Blige, like a Faith, or, you know, maybe Alicia Keys, maybe, but that's because she is hip hop in like our head or New York. I don't know. Things are just different. I think that these genres will always be around. It's sort of like America creates these divisions, just like race. Italian American, Irish American, Black American, African American. Like, no, we're just Americans, and this is just music. But we put everything in a category. And then I don't know whether the world follows us. Is that what you think happens? We are the music, when in terms of at least pop culture.
Yes, I mean, well, we're also the largest, by volume, the largest music market in the world globally. Okay. So, yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
The largest music market. That means we are spending the most.
Yes.
Music.
Yes. We spend the most money by far. Yeah.
Interesting. So what do your students think about, like, okay, so you went to LA. Were you the PD there?
I was the assistant program director there, working for a mentor, a man named Keith Naftali, who, if you Google Keith, he's a legend in our business because he was on the cutting edge of this crossover type of format. He was doing this at a station in San Francisco called KMEL.
I know KMEL,
yeah. So KMEL is the original brainchild, and then 92.3 The Beat was created in the image of KMEL by the original architect of KMEL, who's Keith, and then he brought me in to kind of be the harder edge of what was going on in LA at the time.
Now, how did you meet Keith? Because Keith was not a part of Arizona, was he?
No, but it's interesting. The music director who came and found me at the club, Kevin, went to work as Keith's music director in San Francisco. Okay. So that's what, first of all, that's how I heard KMEL for the first time. And it melted my brain because I was like, oh, this is happening on the radio. Like, people are playing this music back to back. It would be like, you know, Luther back to back with LL Cool J back to back with, I'd never heard that. Right.
Right.
And so, yeah. It was, so that's how I had heard about that connection. And then Keith and I just were like-minded, and we kept in touch. We talked about music and culture all the time. And his original idea was he was going to move on to LA because, again, corporate was buying up these stations. There was a company that bought LA when 92.3, when they purchased it, it was like a AC, which is adult contemporary, like slow jam station. And they had designs that they wanted to make it more active. So Keith wanted to hire me from RCA to program KMEL, but I turned him down because I was happy in New York as a label executive. So he was like, oh, okay, what do I do? And then hired someone else for KMEL. But then when he got to LA and he realized, oh, this is another This LA and San Francisco are not the same.
No, because San Fran was like psychedelic music back then, free love, like funk,
Yeah.
you know. That's interesting. So let me ask the hard questions. A hard question.
Yeah.
And this show is really about teaching. So brutal honesty. Did you ever sleep with your boss to get your roles?
No.
Unfortunately. No, I'm joking. Good.
Well, here's
but go ahead.
No, well, it's interesting. I'm glad you bring that up because this is another thing I cover with my students. It's unfortunate that the rules are, in fact, different for women. But if you want to have any ounce of respect in the workplace, you will not do anything near that. It's not possible for you to maintain your position of authority if you're sleeping with someone in the building. And no, that didn't happen with my immediate bosses, but I did make the mistake of hiring my then boyfriend, who was a man named Joe Rodriguez. He was a world champion DJ. He won the DMC big world champion contest and in Los Angeles. He moved to New York, followed me to New York, followed me to LA. Didn't work the whole time, but that's a whole other thing. And so I got him a job at the station when we finally broke up, when I got the offer to go to San Francisco and I was leaving. Not only did he stay at the station, but he poisoned everyone in the wake because he was in his feelings about us breaking up. And so I tell my female students, you have to do this. It's literally self-preservation because I was undermined in my own workplace by someone I brought in.
You helped, you know?
So absolutely, it just will never go. And it is a double standard, but it will never go well for the woman.
Exactly. I agree. I think my mom used to say, don't eat where you shit.
Yes. Exactly. I use that same expression.
Yeah.